I would like to start, if I could, with people on Myanmar. But Secretary, I'll ask you the question. Is DFAT aware of the joint position statement by allied organisations engaged in revolutionary struggle towards the annihilation of the military dictatorship and establishment of a federal democratic union, issued on the 31st of January this year by those groups in Myanmar?
Senator, I'll ask Ms Moody
It's quite a mouthful of a title, but essentially it's their statement of unity of purpose of a bunch of people that are opposing the Tatmadaw.
Senator, thank you very much. Robin Moody, First Assistant Secretary, Southeast Asia Regional and Mainland. Could you just repeat the title of the statement?
So the title is, it's a joint political statement of the National Unity Government and its allies, and the formal title is the joint position statement by allied organisations engaged in revolutionary struggle towards annihilation of military dictatorship and establishment of a federal democratic union.
Senator, I have to say I have not read it in detail. My team would be aware of it, but happy to take any questions.
Okay. The question I have is, this is one of the latest attempts by the NUG and its allies to start positioning towards a governance structure for beyond the conflict. And my question is, we've had a long history of not engaging formally with the NUG, but now that there is work happening to try and create a more formalised position of all the elements that are opposing the Tatmadaw and their illegitimate government, when will we start engaging so that we are an interlocutor that is supporting the creation of a stable nation with good governance beyond the dreadful conflict that has afflicted that nation now for quite some time?
Thank you very much, Senator. On previous occasions, Minister Wong has made clear her intention that we will continue to engage with the NUG, as we do with other opposition groups, to build a full and complete picture of the situation that's evolving in Myanmar. We certainly appreciate the importance of understanding the many voices for democracy in Myanmar, and Australian officials do engage with the NUG and democratic opposition groups as opportunities arise.
Could I ask for a clarification on that? Opposition would imply that those who they are opposing are the government of the day, which implies a legitimacy. Yes, the Tatmadaw are the power that are in Naypyidaw and other places, but they're hardly legitimate. The NUG is recognised by many as being the legitimate expression of the democratic will of the people of Myanmar, and they are seeking now to formalise the arrangements with the other partners that have been battling the Tatmadaw. When will we recognise that alliance as the legitimate representatives of the people of Myanmar and start engaging with them, looking towards building a positive future?
Thank you very much, Senator. 2 points. Of course, we recognise states, not governments, is the first point. The second point is that perhaps a better characterisation is the voices for democracy that we engage with, loosely characterised in many forums as opposition members, given the situation. But I do take your point that we would not wish to confer any legitimacy on the regime.
Could you take on notice then, or do you have staff here? You said you were sure your staff would be aware of this statement. Is there anyone here in the room that can provide any information to this committee as to what else would they need to do, having considered this statement, to encourage broader engagement by the Australian government with this group of Voices for Democracy, I think you said was the alternate title? So that we have some influence and are an assistance in creating the circumstances for a positive future beyond the conflict.
Thank you, Senator. I'll take that one on notice and get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before we move off Myanmar, and when we looked at sanctions, and I'm aware that there are various autonomous sanctions regimes as well as the UN and also the Magnitsky-style sanctions that we have. But certainly when the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade was writing the report proposing the Magnitsky-style sanctions, one of the intents was that it would give us the ability to work with like-minded nations to have a common approach so that if an individual was sanctioned in Canada, for example, they couldn't come here as an alternative because we hadn't also sanctioned that person, given the conduct is probably as reprehensible to us as it is to Canada. What consultation occurs with our allies around their sanctioning of the Tatmadaw or Hamas for that reason, for that matter, or any other group, to make sure that we have broadly, and we'll obviously have some national interests, but broadly are in step so we achieve that objective of actually shutting down the access of these entities or people to financial transactions, places for them or their family to seek refuge, etc.
Thank you, Senator. I'll refer to my colleague Julie Heckscher to answer that question.
Senator, it's Julie Heckscher, First Assistant Secretary, Regulatory and Legal Policy Division. One of my teams is the Australian Sanctions Office, so I can answer in broad terms, which hopefully will be helpful. We spend a lot of time talking to our like-minded partners who also have sanctions regimes about sanctions in the broad, whether it be the thematic Magnitsky sanctions or other sanctions. You'll be aware that each country has quite different sanctions regimes, different criteria, different rules, etc., and which is often why you see some differences in who can list who and who what. But the reason that we share information, that we collaborate and coordinate with them is exactly as you say, because what we want to ensure is that the sanctions are as effective and as impactful as possible, and so we absolutely do that. Hopefully that kind of broad statement is the reassurance that you need, that we do talk a lot. We will engage both before sanctions that we impose. They will share their thinking on sanctions that might be possible and areas where we might potentially either coordinate, collaborate, support one another's sanctions regimes, or where we think that there are particular strategies or directions we might go.
Sure. So just as a proof point, if you like, to try and just establish how thorough that is, the US on the 22nd of January this year had, I think, what was their 5th round of sanctions against Hamas with a range of individuals. In our sanctions on Hamas, how many of those individuals that the US sanctioned have now been covered by Australian sanctions?
We just need to get other officials to the table.
Sure.
Sorry, Senator, you were after the exact overlap between different sanctions regimes.
That's right. If it's going to take too long, I'm happy to take it on notice. But what I'm trying to understand here is, they've had 5 rounds. I don't think we've come close to that. They've covered a range of people. In our round, which I welcome, how many of the people they've sanctioned have we covered? Is it 1/5 or is it the majority? Where are we at?
I'll take the specifics on notice about compare and contrast. I'll make 2 points. One is we each have different sanctions regimes with which we have to work, and we have different requirements to develop our statements of case within those regimes. You'll be aware, just more broadly, that some of the individuals whom we've sanctioned have sought to take legal action. It underscores the importance of us making sure that the advice we put to the Minister, that the statements of case are strong and stand up to scrutiny and ensure that they actually meet the objective of the sanction.
Sure. And just to clarify, for the information you take on notice, I had mentioned individuals. I think the US sanctions on the 22nd had a number of entities as well as individuals in it. So if you could include
we'll do that for you.
in that.